Hey guys, welcome to day 256 of the Bible in a Year plan. Today, we will be reading Job 28 through 30 and Revelation 18. If you need to read more about this plan, visit the High Quality Gospel website with the link in the description of the episode and the podcast. Please leave a like and follow the podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Now, let's begin with reading Job 28. Surely there is a mine for silver, and a place for gold is refined. Iron is taken from the ground, and copper is smelted from ore. A miner puts an end to the darkness. He probes the deepest recesses, for ore in the gloomy darkness. He cuts a shaft far from human habitation, in places unknown to those who walk above ground, suspended far away from people. The miners swing back and forth. Food may come from the earth, but below the surface the earth is transformed as by fire. Its rocks are a source of lapis lazuli, contains flakes of gold. No bird of prey knows that path, no falcon's eye has seen it. Proud beasts have never walked on it, no lion has ever prowled over it. The miner uses a flint tool and turns up ore from the root of the mountains. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eyes spot every treasure. He dams up the streams from flowing, so that he may bring it to light what is hidden. But where can wisdom be found, and where is understanding located? No one can know its value. Since it cannot be found in the land of the living, the ocean depths say, "It's not in me," while the sea declares, "I don't have it." Gold cannot be exchanged for it, and silver cannot be weighed out for its price. Wisdom cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in precious onyx or lapis lazuli. Gold and glass do not compare with it. The articles of fine gold cannot be exchanged for it. Coral and quartz are not worth mentioning. The price of wisdom is beyond pearls. Topaz from Cush cannot compare with it, and it cannot be valued in pure gold. Where then does wisdom come from, and where is understanding located? It is hidden from the eyes of every living thing, and concealed from the birds of the sky. Abaddon and Death say, "We have heard news of it with our ears." But God understands the way to wisdom, and he knows its location. For he looks to the ends of the earth, and sees everything under the heavens. When God fixed the weight of the wind, and distributed the water by measure, when he established a limit for the rain, and a path for the lightning, he considered wisdom and evaluated it. He established it and examined it. He said to mankind, "I fear the Lord, for that is wisdom, and I turn from evil is understanding." Job continued his discourse, saying, "If only I could be as in months gone by, in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone above my head, and I walked through darkness by his light. I would be as I was in the days of my youth, when God's friendship rested on my tent, when the Almighty was still with me, and my children were around me, where my feet were bathed in curds, and the rock poured out streams of oil for me. When I went out to the city gate, and took my seat in the town square, the young men saw me and withdrew, while older men stood to their feet. City officials stopped talking, and covered their mouths with their hands. The noblemen's voices were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. When they heard me, they blessed me, and when they saw me, they spoke well of me. For I rescued the poor who cried out for help, and the fatherless child who had no one to support him. The dying blessed me, and I made the widow's heart rejoice. I clothed myself in righteousness, and it enveloped me. My just decisions were like a robe and a turban. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy, and I examined the case of the stranger. I shattered the fangs of the unjust, and snatched the prey from his teeth. So I thought, I will die in my own nest, and multiply my days as the sand. My roots will have access to water, and the dew will rest on my branches all night. My whole being will be refreshed within me, and my bow will be renewed in my hand. Men listened to me with expectation, waiting silently for my advice. After a word from me, they did not speak again. My speech settled on them like dew. They waited for me as for the rain, and opened their mouths as for spring showers. If I smiled at them, they couldn't believe it. They were thrilled at the light of my countenance. I directed their course and presided as chief. I lived as a king among his troops, like one who comforts those who mourn. But now they mock me, men younger than I am, whose fathers I would have refused to put with my sheepdogs. What use to me was the strength of their hands? Their vigor had left them. Emaciated from poverty and hunger, they gnawed the dry land, the desolate wasteland by night. They plucked mallow among the shrugs, and the roots of the broom tree were their food. They were banished from the human society. People shouted at them as if they were thieves. They were living on the slopes of the wadis, among the rocks, and in holes on the ground. They bray among the shrubs. They huddle beneath the thistles. Foolish men, without even a name. They were forced to leave the land. Now I am mocked by their songs. I have become an object of scorn to them. They despise me and keep their distance from me. They do not hesitate to spit in my face, because God has loosened my bowstring and oppressed me. They have cast off restraint in my presence. The rabble rise up at my right. They trap my feet. They construct their siege ramp against me. They tear up my path. They contribute to my destruction, without anyone to help them. They advance as though a gaping breach. They keep rolling in through the ruins. Terrors are turned loose against me. They chase my dignity away like wind, and my prosperity has passed by like a cloud. Now my life is poured out before me, and days of suffering have seized me. Night pierces my bones, but my gnawing pains never rest. My clothing is distorted with great force. He chokes me by the neck of my garment. He throws me into the mud, and I have become like dust and ashes. I cry out to you for help, but you do not answer me. When I stand up, you merely look at me. You have turned against me with cruelty. You harass me with your strong hand. You lift me up on the wind and make me ride it. You scatter me in the storm. Yes, I know that you will lead me to death, the place appointed for all who live. Yet no one would stretch out his hand against a ruined person when he cries out to him for help because of his distress. Have I not wept for those who have fallen on hard times? Has my soul not grieved for the needy? But when I hoped for good, evil came. When I looked for light, darkness came. I am turning within and cannot rest. Days of suffering confront me. I walk about blackened, but not by the sun. I stood in the assembly and cried out for help. I have become a brother to jackals and a companion of ostriches. My skin blackens and flakes off, and my bones burn with fever. My lyre is used for mourning, and my flute for the sound of weeping. Now we read Revelation 18. After this I saw another angel with a great authority coming down from heaven, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. He called out in a mighty voice, "It has fallen, Babylon the Great has fallen. She has become a home for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, and a haunt for every unclean and despicable beast. For all the nations have drunk the wine of her sexual immorality, which brings wrath. The kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown wealthy from her sensuality and excess." Then I heard another voice from heaven, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, or receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Pay her back the way she also paid, and double it according to her works. And the cup in which she mix a double portion for her. As much as she glorified herself and indulged her sensual and excessive ways, give her that much torment and grief, for she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, I am not a widow, and I will never see grief. For this reason her plagues will come in just one day, death and grief and famine. She will be burned up with fire, because the Lord God who judges her is mighty. The kings of the earth who have committed sexual immorality and shared her sensual and excessive ways will weep and mourn over her when they see the smoke from her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, Babylon, the mighty city, for in a single hour your judgment has come. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, because no one buys their cargo any longer. Cargo of gold, silver, jewels, and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet, all kinds of fragrant wood products, objects of ivory, objects of expensive wood, brass, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, and frankincense, wine, olive oil, fine flour, and grain, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, and slaves, human lives. The fruit you craved has left you, and all your splendid and glamorous things are gone. They will never find them again. The merchants of these things who became rich from her will stand far off in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, jewels, and pearls. For a single hour such fabulous wealth was destroyed. And every shipmaster, seafarer, and sailors, and all who do business by sea, stood far off as they watched the smoke from her burning, and kept crying out, Who was like this great city? They threw dust on their heads and kept crying out, weeping and mourning. Woe, woe, the great city, where all of those who have ships on the sea became rich from her wealth, for in a single hour she was destroyed. Rejoice over her, heaven, and you saints, apostles, and prophets, because God has pronounced on her judgment. She passed on you. Then the mighty angel picked up a stone like a large millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, In this way Babylon the great city will be thrown down violently, and never be found again. The sound of harpists, musicians, flutists, and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No craftsman of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a mill will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again, and the voice of a groom and bride will never be heard in you again. All this will happen because your merchants were the nobility of the earth, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. In her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and all those slaughtered on the earth. On day 255, we read of Job defending his knowledge of God, and in Revelation, the symbol of sin and desire rules the earth. Today in Job, we begin with Job pondering about wisdom and what it is. He treats wisdom like a treasure, one that must be searched for and mined for, like precious metals. He sees wisdom as something hidden, buried in the earth. People are willing to do whatever it takes to find what is hidden in the earth. They create extravagant mines, stop waters, and they do the same with wisdom, or should do the same. Wisdom is valuable, and people must pursue it as they would gems and metals. But true wisdom is rare and hard to search for. Not everyone will have it, and not everyone will pursue it. Only God understands wisdom, and He is the source of it all. That is why wisdom is difficult to obtain. Those who are not willing to seek God will not obtain wisdom. Job then remembers the past, to a time when God looked favorably on him. At least that's what he believes. He mourns the better days, when he had a family, his property, and riches. The people looked favorably to him as well. He helped. He was known to be a comforter. He felt secure, and that security has been destroyed, taken from him. Now he faces misery. The people now mock Job, and he sees who they really are. He faces such spiritual misery, and Job still feels it is injustice, and feels God should be merciful enough to end his suffering. Job is still facing a crisis of belief, and he doesn't understand, because he knows that God is merciful. And so if he really is merciful, then why has God not shown mercy to Job? He knows God is just, so why does he allow such evil to come on Job? Job felt secure in life, and now it has been taken away. Things like this will happen, quickly, without us being prepared for them. And so, since Job was not prepared, he faces this crisis of his spirit. In Revelation, we see the symbol of Babylon, representing religious corruption. In this context, Babylon is a political and economic entity. It is probably also a literal city, perhaps not with that exact name, during the end times. It's common for a capital city to stand in as a reference to a culture or government or even a religion. Babylon, in this chapter, occupies a place somewhere in that range of meanings. The fall described here most likely occurs near the end of the tribulation, probably as a result of the bowl judgments. God is warning the people to flee. Not only does God want His people to avoid being caught up in the sins of Babylon, He warns them that tangible judgment is coming, and they need to flee. The sins of Babylon are enormous, and her judgment from God will be in proportion to that sin. Leaders will grieve over the corrupt and sinful city, going from very wealthy to desolate. Thank you for joining in the reading and understanding of these chapters, and let us all be vigilant in continuing this reading. Please share, like, follow, or whatever you can do to help us reach more people with the Bible reading. Please also check out the High Quality Gospel website for more information and a couple of store items. Thank you, and keep learning.